even going to the Catholic schools, I wasn't like too close to any adults that were like practicing it. So I never got to see like the Catholic faith lived out. And I think I was really lost. Our marriage was struggling. The intimacy part was not there. I'm actually so grateful that it all came out after our conversion. Immediately I called Saul and I was like, hey, do we need to talk about something? Because it was like, I was just swarmed, and it was like they were mocking me, laughing at me. It just felt like evil spirits just consumed the room. I would turn around and something was there. Like I felt like something was in the room, and it felt like it wasn't very good. And so I'm gonna pray a Hail Mary, but all I get out is Hail Mary, and it's off of me immediately, and this gust of wind just deafening in my ears, like, but like you could not hear anything else. There's nothing I can do but lay it at God's feet. And then he just picks you up, like that's what it took was letting it go to get over it, to being picked back up. I didn't know at the time, but I know now that it's God in the confessional. I'm just so full of joy that it was like, I just wanted to keep going to daily mass and going to confession.
Well, friends, welcome back to Catholic Feedback. I'm thankful to be here with you once again. I know today's interview, I know I say this all the time, but today's interview is going to be amazing. I'm so excited because I'm welcoming someone to the channel who I met at our parish, and she approached me outside one day after an event we were at. She said, Keith, I just want to tell you something about my conversion. And I'm like, okay. And within about 30 seconds, I was just like, what? This is amazing. And I'm very thrilled to be able to welcome my good friend Jewel to the channel. Jewel, you are a mom of two, a wife, and you are also a realtor, right? You work with your parents.
Yes.
You're a convert to the faith, and you have an incredible story that I can't wait to get into. So welcome, first of all, to the channel. Welcome, and let's just jump right in. Tell everybody about you and how you were brought up. Let's just begin at the beginning, really. What was your upbringing like with regard to faith and family?
I had I think a pretty normal, very fun childhood. It was really centered around playing and family, like as normal as you can expect. I don't remember, before we started going to Catholic school, I don't remember where we went to church, but I actually asked my parents recently when I knew I was going to do this, and we went to a Lutheran church, actually kitty corner from Immaculate Conception, where we go to church now. But we talked about God, we prayed at night, but we didn't really get into like the depths of faith or anything, and we weren't raised Catholic, so definitely none of like the Catholic beliefs or anything. But I loved my parents. I have an older brother who's 19 months older than I, so we're super close. But it all kind of changed. So he's older than I. He was in kindergarten, and it all changed one day when he came home from school, and he told my mom that a little boy in the bathroom at school told him that God isn't real. And this little boy's parents were Satanists, like openly. They wore the symbols around their necklaces type stuff. It was actually kind of like, there was a green eggs and ham day at the school, the kindergarten that he went to. I remember going to that actually. And they were there. It was kind of weird, but like as a kid to see that. But so that scared my mom, because we did not talk about evil. It was just God is real. I didn't, like growing up, I didn't even think that was like a choice that you could not believe in God. That was just true. That was it. There was no question. But we didn't talk about evil. We didn't talk about the devil. We didn't say that word, nothing like that. So of course that scared my mom, and she decided to send us to the Catholic schools the next year. So my brother in first grade and I in kindergarten, because that's the only school that has like the faith-based. So that's why they chose the Catholic schools. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, actually was the art teacher there at the time. So now I'll go back into like my parents' background. My mom, both of her side of the family, they're Protestant. They still are. And my mom's parents are really wonderful Christians. Actually, like growing up, every once in a while, my grandma would text us. She has 4 grandchildren, so me and my cousins and my brother. She would text us and say, "Why were you born?" And we used to like kind of joke about like, "Oh, grandma texted, why were you born?" But it was the answer she was always looking for was, to be a servant for God. So definitely some good roots there for the Christian faith. And then my dad's mom was Methodist. Her dad was a Methodist pastor here in town in Cedar Rapids, actually. And then my dad's dad was Catholic. But growing up, I didn't ever have someone close to me that practiced the Catholic faith. So even going to the Catholic schools, I wasn't like too close to any adults that were like practicing it. So I never got to see like the Catholic faith lived out, I guess. But I enjoyed the Catholic schools. I had a hard time making friends, but as far as like, like I never fought back or got rebellious with like what we were being taught. That again, it was just like, yeah, that's it. But I didn't like see the depth of it. I wasn't like taking it in and like really digesting it. I feel like it was kind of just going over my head pretty much. And in 8th grade, actually, like I said, I had a hard time making friends at school. I really wanted to go to where all my neighborhood friends were, because there was like six of us girls, I think, in my neighborhood, including myself, all really close. That's like all we did all day was play after school. And they all went to the public schools, so I wanted to go there. 8th grade, I went to McKinley, a public school. But ultimately, like, obviously it was God, but I was drawn back to going to the Catholic schools, to Xavier, for high school.
Now, so your parents aren't Catholic, but you're going to the Catholic school. Did you feel weird? Like, were the other students there talking about all this Catholic stuff, and did you feel left out by that? And when you're like in a Catholic school, but you're not Catholic, when you have mass, like you can't take communion.
Yeah.
Did you feel like an outsider, or was that something that wasn't really a big deal for you?
Once they sent us to All Saints, was the elementary school, we did start being raised in the Catholic Church. So my brother and I had our first communion.
Oh, really?
Yep. And then my parents actually joined the Catholic faith too while we were early elementary school. You have cheaper tuition if you are Catholic. Oh, wow. So, which is like, when I look at that, like, what a blessing, really. Like, what a blessing that boy said that to my brother in the bathroom. And then, like, what a blessing that you get a discount if you're Catholic. Because that's really what, like, not the greatest means, but that's what brought my family to it. And that's why I'm here today. So, and my parents do love the church. They just still to this day would call themselves Christian. Like there's some things about the Catholic Church that they disagree on. Whereas like now, since my conversion, I'm all in. Whatever the Catholic Church says, that's what I say. I don't necessarily have to understand it. We're not going to understand it all, like the Eucharist, I'm not going to fully understand that. But I believe it. I know it. It's the truth. And so like that's where my parents and I have some differences. They are Christian. I'm a Catholic Christian. But technically, yes, they're Catholic.
Okay. So, yep. So you become Catholic in the school system, yep. And you're doing that. But what about your heart? Were you at that point in time understanding to the point where you believed then, or was that just kind of going along with everything and going with the flow?
I didn't know there was like really a distinction like between different Christian denominations. I didn't really even like know that was a thing. Like I didn't know even like what the catechism, we weren't really taught in school. If we were, then I don't remember it. So I didn't know like that there were big differences. I didn't know like what the rocks of the foundation of the Catholic faith were. I didn't know like the beauty, the depth. It wasn't that I didn't believe in it. I don't feel like I was ever presented that. And I think that's ultimately because I never had that model figure, someone close in my personal life demonstrating that or teaching it to me. Like at home, we're taught, God is real, God loves you, all that. But we weren't taught like the the deeper Catholic stuff, because my parents, like we weren't praying rosaries and talking about
It's
the
sort of like
Eucharist
cultural Catholicism,
right?
really.
Yeah. Yep. So I was getting, what I could at school, but I feel like it was probably watered down, but I got the foundational rock of like, I felt like everyone believed in God. Like, again, it wasn't like a matter of like, is God real or not? Because I was always around people that God is real. That was the belief. So I'm really grateful that I've never stepped away from that center belief of, I've never questioned God's existence. And that's a blessing. That's a privilege. I feel like I'm very grateful to have had that.
So when you got out of high school, tell us a little bit what happens next in your life and in your faith journey there.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll go back a little bit. When I was 15, I met my husband now at a roller skating rink. And
That's so cute. I love that.
I still go roller
Did you
skating.
skate around and like the disco ball was going and you were playing like a...
I was actually backward skating, and his friend came up to me, and I didn't have any time of day for his friend, but once Solomon rolled up, I was very interested, which is funny because he was wearing a really ugly shirt and his hair was very tall. So I don't know. It had to be God, really. It had to, but and we like never left each other's side since that day, like for real. So and actually I asked him 3 questions. I asked him how old he was. Did he have a job? He had 2. And he says, I asked him if he was Christian. I'm pretty sure though that I asked him if he was Catholic, but whatever, regardless. He said yes, and that he's one of 12 kids and he's about as Catholic as they come. And I think to that I said, all from the same mom and dad. But but at the time I didn't even know like what was unfolding there. When I look back at that moment, I'm like, wow, this is the man.
Now, did he go to Catholic school too, or was he homeschooled or something like that?
He was homeschooled.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is the man that would bring me to God.
So at 15 years old, and I love how you said he rolled up on the roller skates, and so you guys get together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you're asking him about his faith journey. Was he practicing his faith at the time, or where was he with all of that?
I always like to joke and say that Solomon didn't have an excuse, because he was raised in the faith for sure. Like at home, they did the homeschooling program that was like Catholic centered. So he knew it all, not all of it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He knew it, but just like anybody else, we were both deep in sin and didn't. I think he was still a child too. Like he didn't quite understand the depth or like the reality of like how real it is, the constant battle that we're in. So, but it was good for me, like we talked, and I would go to mass with him some Sundays really to please my mother-in-law more than anything. But we didn't go all the time. We lived together before we got married. We were not doing some super great things, but that love that we had for each other was always there. Like we've been best friends since the first day. There's nobody quite like Saul.
And when did you guys get married?
May 29th of 2020.
So how old were you at that point in time?
19.
So you guys were kids, basically.
Yes.
So when you guys got married, where was faith in that equation? Because a lot of people get married and now they have to create their own family faith environment versus when they're growing up, they just go with their parents. Now you're on your own.
Right.
What was that going to be like for you guys?
Yeah, we like I said, we'd go to church here and there. And I remember more my personal, how I was with God at that point. Like I would journal, I would write periodically, and it was always to God, and it's actually cute. Like I've found those since, and I've like read them over, and there's like you said, they're like totally written with like a childlike mind, which is so sweet because they're always kind of like a little bit sad, but they end with like so much hope. And I think I was really lost. Our marriage was struggling. The intimacy part was not there. But like I said, we wanted it to be. And we did pray about that actually a lot together, because I always said, this is something only God can change. And he did, and we'll get into that. But yeah, I think we really wanted to be closer to God and to each other, but there was like, for some reason, roadblocks in the way. I still don't know like what exactly that was, if it was just we weren't ready. Like God knows when we're ready to be shown the truth, and when we're actually ready to like take it in and digest it and take it seriously. So I think we just weren't ready, but also I think we needed to go through that struggle to like really appreciate the miracle of it being fixed, because it just made me trust God so much, made me know that he like really all things are possible with God. Because there are times when I'd say that to Saul, like, God, only God can fix this. But in the back of my head, I was like, can he? So when he actually did, I think that's what I needed, that confidence in God of like, wow, he really did that. He really changed what, for like 3 years we struggled with, which I know that sounds like hardly anything, right?
No, it doesn't.
But
it doesn't.
But it was taxing. It was, and it was because we weren't praying about it together, and there was some, mortal sins going on that I think God was kind of protecting me from. Again, I think that all needed to happen the way it did so that we could see like how true and amazing the sacrament of confession really is. Like, I feel like all of these, God took what was bad and really made it into this great thing, really gave us so much faith and confidence in his sacraments and in him.
I think when people get married, there's a lot of expectations around, what it's going to be like to be married. And people who are married tend to look at that, and they look at newlyweds, and they always kind of, snicker a little bit because they go, you guys are in for it, but when you're in the middle of that, when you first get married, you think, oh, it's going to be so amazing.
Yeah.
We're going to be connected in every way you can imagine. And if there's anything that isn't up to what your expectations were, you can kind of panic.
Yeah.
And feel like something is wrong.
Right.
What do we need to do here?
Yeah.
And that's when we have to have those moments of saying, okay, where do we turn?
Right.
Were you guys, you said you talk about the sacraments. Were you in the middle of that at that point? Was that the first place you went,
No.
or what did you guys do?
Yeah. No, I actually didn't think that the sacrament of confession was like necessary. I actually was like, I had that whole, the stigma of like, oh, priests are just curious and, want to know what's going on with their parishioners. So that is not where I ran at all. I actually think if you would have told Jewel then what Jewel knows now and how often I go to confession now, she probably wouldn't even believe you. I think I just like internalized it because I thought something was wrong with me. I thought something was wrong with me. Like, why am I'm freshly married, and I'm young. Why can't we connect in this way? So I thought something was wrong with me. I internalized it. I think I just tried to ignore it, really, which, that was a really sad time. That was a hard time. And it was just like by the grace of God that I don't want to say that like that we stayed together, because we always loved each other. Divorce wasn't like an option for us, but it felt like we were strangers, and it was just getting further disconnected.
I know it's a tough thing to talk about, but I also know that right now there are people watching this interview that are in your situation or that are about to be in your situation. And I want you to share with them
what exactly I'm talking about.
Yeah, what you're talking about.
Perfect.
Because I think, there's a fine line sometimes between trying to generalize everything,
right,
and between like going into salacious details that don't need to be gone into.
Perfect. So my husband struggled with pornography since he was 14, and it was a several times a day thing. And I had known about it from a few incidences during our dating, but I didn't know it was like that drastic. And I'm actually so grateful that it all came out after our conversion because, I don't know if I would have, I wouldn't have seen it the same. I don't want to say that I don't know if I would have stayed because I love Solomon. I'm sure I would have. But I'm just not sure if I would have had the grace to forgive as easy. I wouldn't have seen that my husband needed help. I would have seen it as, he's a jerk and what's wrong with me. I would have thought it was resting too much on my shoulders. Whereas since it came out after my conversion, how much of a problem it was, I saw it as my husband needs help. I need to help him.
Pornography is such a destructive, evil force.
Yeah, it really is
in our
demonic.
society, and people don't take that as seriously as they should have. And sometimes it's because it's so prevalent. People can think, oh, it's just one of those things. But as a young, newly married couple, this was impacting your marriage.
Yes.
To the point where you were desperate, like, what is going on here? And yet in the middle of all that, he's having this struggle, and he probably doesn't know what to do. Yeah.
And when, and he'll talk about it with anybody too. And he says, he just felt guilt and dirty every single time, but it was a vicious cycle. It truly is an addiction, and it truly is demonic. When you bring that into your home, you bring demonic activity with it. It's just the truth. We've experienced it. After our conversion, there would be a few times, like one time he'd do really good, where he'd go for a long period of time without it. And then, accidentally somehow happened. Stress at work usually was like the biggest thing. And he'd always at first feel the struggle to talk to me about it, even though I tried to tell him so hard, like, let's just talk about it. Call me before it even happens. Call me right after it happens. Like, let's get through it. Because I knew that it was bringing demonic activity into the home. And he wasn't quite seeing that yet. And then once he started to see that it really was, that I wasn't just talking crazy, that was ultimately the factor that helped him now be off of it for so long. Because he started seeing like the actual effects. But one day in particular, he worked late nights and it was just like chaotic. And since my conversion, that's been one of the things. God's just been really great with letting me feel evil. It's not necessarily see it, but I can tell the spiritual side a little bit more, which at first was really scary, but it's such a gift because immediately I called Saul and I was like, hey, do we need to talk about something? Because it was like I was just swarmed, and it was like they were mocking me, laughing at me. And what I mean by they, it just felt like evil spirits just consumed the room. My son started crying. Yes, people can probably say that as like, oh, you're overthinking it, but I know in my heart that something was wrong. So I called Saul and I was like, hey, is everything okay with you? And, he was like, yeah, everything's fine. And then it came out 2 days later, he's like, I had a relapse. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was actually the time when it clicked for him of like, whoa, me doing this, like we are no longer two, but we're one. Like sin, you can't hide sin from God. God will always know. But you also can't hide it from your spouse. They might not know it like God knows it, but you actually let in, if you're in mortal sin, if you're sinning against God, you're letting it into your house too, like in a way, like you're especially the man, like you're the gatekeeper. Make sure it doesn't come into the house because it does start to affect. I think Father Chad Ripperger has written some books about this, which they're very huge books, so I've not read it all, but I've skimmed through some of the pages when I know parts of it will help me. And like that's one of the biggest things is when you're in mortal sin, you like the demons can affect your wife, and the fact that she like can't do household duties, or they'll go after your intimacy. So what you think is just like, oh, it's just hard, like where the time is getting away from us, the kids are getting in the way, It's like, I'm not saying it's always something demonic, but in our case, that's like what it was. So since you can see, obviously you can't, but if you're me or Saul, you can see the night and day difference of when, like, okay, we need to get to confession, or, oh, we need to talk about something. Once it's out in the open, because we're ugly people. I think it's important that your spouse knows, like, the ugliest part of you, like, because they're there to help you not be that anymore. And I think it's important to not pretend like we're perfect. That we all have, like, deep, dark things inside of us. And that's why God has given us a spouse, is to uncover that, to heal from it, to get better from that. And we're never going to be perfect, and that's ultimately how you, it's just funny how, like, when the times when we've told each other, like, the hardest things to say, that's actually brought us closer. But it's so hard to muster it out. It's so hard to get it out. And you feel like, oh, like, what are they going to think? And that's when, like, forgiveness is, like, the biggest thing. I think things changed when, instead of praying for my husband to not watch porn, I prayed for me to forgive.
Well, I want to thank you for being willing to talk about this. I know it's hard, but I also kind of know your story. And here's the other thing I know. You guys are, and we're kind of jumping around a little bit linear-wise, but I don't care.
Okay.
You guys are going to have such an impact because you and your husband are about to become small group leaders for our marriage groups that we're doing in our parish. And I'm so excited for you and Saul to help other couples, because you guys are so young, but you've already tapped in to some huge nuggets of wisdom and truth when it comes to marriage that a lot of times people twice your age are just figuring out. And I know you guys are going to be able to help so many people through this. But here's the added aspect of this that's so important. It's not just about getting away from porn. It's about filling what that was taking up. Because, like, I was thinking about what Jesus said, two things. The first thing, when you were talking about, as the man guarding your home, when the Pharisees were accusing Jesus of casting out demons by the power of the devil, he said, how can a kingdom divided against itself stand? And then he said, if someone wants to break into someone's house, he must first bind the strong man. And once the strong man is bound, he can come and go. Right. But when we as husbands, especially, and I think wives too, but especially as husbands, when we recognize that the devil is gaining access into our families by our refusal to submit to God and by our participation in mortal sin, that opens up our families to demonic activity. And Jesus is saying, look, you need to take this seriously, because it isn't just about, well, hey, if you want to have a good marriage, X, Y, Z. No, if you want your marriage to be protected, because this is demonic stuff. It's demonic stuff. And I think it's powerful that you are calling that out by saying, look, this isn't just one of those things where, it's a victimless crime. There are no victimless crimes when it comes to sin. And so I know that you're going to help a lot of people through that, and helping people to understand that, like you said, he needed help. So let's get into what that was like leading up to this moment of conversion that you guys had, because it's pretty awesome story, and I want to share that with people. Okay,
I'm glad you think so. I'm not, like, super proud of how that night started, but I'm very grateful for how it ended.
Well, let's set the stage here. So you have two kids.
Yes.
And you guys are newly married. You're in the middle of this struggle, trying to figure things out, but you're not going to confession. You don't believe the sacraments. But the reality is you aren't quite aware of everything that's going on at this point in time.
We just had, like, no idea. I really feel like we were like babies, like, as far as faith went. It was just surface level. God loves us. That was like it. It was like, God's real, God loves us, but let's just do whatever, type of thing. And at this time, we actually had just had our daughter, just one child, and you want me to talk about the night?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it was December 26th of 2022. My daughter had just turned 1 the day before on Christmas. And we had this friend couple of ours. And they had been coming over a lot. And I can't remember. I think we were talking about God. We were before our conversion even. But we were talking about a lot of other things too. But God was like, faith was definitely like one of the things that we'd talk about. But we were playing this game called Let's Get Deep, which is actually a pretty cool game. The questions are like, who do you admire? What's a day you'd like to relive? If you had $1 million, what would you do with it? Like stuff like that. But so I don't know how to say it, so I'll just say it. We were high. We smoked weed that night. So I pick up a card and it says, what's your idea of hell? Well, I'm already kind of paranoid. That's just how I would get. And now I'm really paranoid because I grew up with the belief that we don't talk about that. We don't talk about Satan. We don't talk about the devil, hell, none of it. We just talk about the good stuff because if you say it, then might happen or what you're inviting it in. Whereas I didn't know that, like, I was inviting it in by not believing how it could affect my life, how it was affecting my life. And so I was like, oh, we're not doing that one. And my friend said, well, what is it? And I said, no, we're not doing that one. And so he grabbed it and he read the card. And he said, well, whoa, let's just talk about it. And he's like, what if hell is just you don't feel God's love anymore? Which hell is many things, many scary things, many horrible things. But that struck me that I had never not experienced God's love. So it first hit me with myself. I realized that I wasn't doing all that I could do to, like, for God, for myself too, to one day be with him for eternal life. That wasn't necessarily my number one priority. I didn't know that, but it kind of hit me that, wow, I'm not taking this seriously. And then it hit me about my husband, that I'm not helping him either take it seriously. And then it hit me with our daughter. And she didn't deserve that. Here I have the best blessing, and I'm not treating it as good as I should. Because she's not my daughter, she's God's. And so our friends went downstairs, and so we had like a moment, just 3 of us, and my daughter was sleeping. And so I looked at Solomon and I said, we have to do better for her. And so I don't know what happened. Like, it was just in that moment, my heart changed. It did a 180. Like, God used to be a light switch for me. I would turn him on when I'd need him, and I would turn him off unknowingly. Like, I never wanted to turn God off, but I was. Like, I didn't realize I was turning him off, but I was. And in that moment, the switch turned on. My heart must have just been open just enough for him to just fill it. And the light switch was turned off, and then it was removed. And it almost doesn't even feel like it was my choice. I know it was, but it almost doesn't feel like I chose that, because it's just been every day of my life since that day. I have asked, why me? And oh my goodness, can you believe that happened? Because my life has just been so different exteriorly and interiorly since then. I felt like, so again, it was nothing like, I didn't see anything. There was no big ray of light or, days leading up to this. It was just in a moment that my life was. It's like an illumination
of conscience, really, is what you hear people talk about that?
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds to me like that's what happened to you in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the gift of faith was literally given to me in that moment.
That's
Yeah.
so powerful. So
Yeah.
when you say that to Saul, like, what's his reaction?
Yeah. It definitely hit me harder than it hit him, but he took it seriously. I mean, Saul's always been my right-hand man. Everything that I want to do and achieve, he's always been right there helping me do it. So he agreed, and he knew it too. He agreed. You know, it was definitely it was a striking moment. How much it hit me, he felt it too. Even if he didn't feel it on him, he saw it on me. And so over the next couple days then, Saul and I were talking about like conspiracy theories. And so he grew up really Catholic. His dad, so this is 2022. We were together since 2016. So his dad would talk about conspiracy theories. And I was never like, okay, what, I was always just like, all right, like tinfoil hat, like we don't need to get that deep, it's not that deep. But then with that gift of faith, of like acceptance of like, and it was just immediate, like, okay, I'm Catholic. Because I already was Catholic, I always would have called myself Catholic. So it wasn't that conversion, it wasn't necessarily like a debate of, oh, I got to jump into the Catholic. I was just like, okay, I'm on board. Like it made sense. But going through the conspiracy theories that Solomon, and I'm not talking about like, like the moon landing or anything, like the ones that are about the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. It just all made sense. And I was like, whoa, yeah, why is the devil after the Catholic Church so bad, And wow, he is just out in the world making himself known. And I've this entire time just been pretending like it's not that big of a deal. And it's a huge deal. My life depends on it. And so does my husband's, my daughter, all of these people that I love, the whole world. Like, why aren't we talking about this? And it actually, I started to feel like I was crazy. Like, why can't they see it, Well, I couldn't see it until, that gift of faith.
So when you say conspiracy theories, I don't think you're talking about like, okay, the Pope is really like a lizard or something like that.
Right, no.
You're talking more like from a spiritual reality.
Yes.
That there's an evil conspiracy,
yes.
a demonic conspiracy
yes.
to destroy the Catholic Church.
Correct.
And to recognize that is Christ's church.
Yep.
And that the devil's trying to destroy it.
Yep.
I just want to clarify that because it's the internet.
Yeah, thank you.
People are going to be like, what does she mean?
Yeah, thank you. So then so that was like, that helped me because it was like, why is the devil coming after the Catholic Church so hard? So that's why it was ultimately like, oh yeah, that's where we're going to be. That's where we're going. So then January 1st, start of the new year, it was a Sunday, we go to Mass. And this is like the first time that I'm going because I want to go, because I know this is where I need to be, not necessarily for my mother-in-law anymore. And I don't remember like obviously like the homily or anything, but I remember being able to listen, even with a 1-year-old. Like I could listen. It was beautiful, and I wasn't as distracted, I think. But I loved it so much that we went the next day, and then we went the next day, and then we went the next day, and then we went every single day because I didn't know about daily Mass. Like I think I knew about it, but I didn't know that it was actually daily. Yeah. So we went every single day for just about 3 months. I then got pregnant and got really sick. So, but it was awesome. It really changed the dynamic of our day to start the day with going to Mass. I mean, it was, not only did I love being there, but I loved how we came home from going to Mass. Like, and I didn't see anything happening different at Mass, but I know that the graces that you get receiving the Eucharist, that we were just changed people. And we still try to go to daily Mass as often as we can because the days are different. And I don't mean like, oh, they're easy. I just mean like,
for sure,
like you just feel so closer to God that it's easier to get through the hard parts because you have that, that reminder of having gone to Mass today and the crucifixion, and it's right there in front of your face. for that day, because I feel like as humans, we're so easy to on to the next thing and to forget things. So
what was confession like for you after you had that night?
Yeah. So we actually went to confession because that was we opened up about the pornography, and that's when Saul was like, I need to go to confession. So that was the first time that I had heard about confession since our conversion. And this was January 4th. I won't forget the day. So we go to confession, and it's this really old priest. And I said...
He was like 50.
He's like 90.
Oh, okay.
But I went in there and I said, I have no idea what I'm doing. That's what I said. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't gone to this in so long. Which I think was our wedding day was the last time I did it. But I know for a fact I didn't take it seriously then, which is sad. But and so he says, would you like to come in here? Because it wasn't face to face. And I'm yes man. So I said yes, but I didn't necessarily want to be in there. But so I walked in there, and that's when I'm like, wow, this really old priest. That was just my first. And he, the first thing that he said to me was, you're beautiful. And it's just kind of hitting me like, I didn't know at the time, but I know now that it's God in the confessional. But at the time, I'm a crybaby, obviously. So I did cry when he said that to me because I wasn't expecting that. And then he said something along the lines of like, spill your guts. You haven't done anything that I haven't done. So he really gave me a space to just let it all out. And that's what I did. And then afterwards, like, I don't know a word to describe how I felt. I don't think there's a word for how I felt. But Solomon and I said to him, I was like, I want to do that again. That was amazing. And he's like, well, you can go as often as you need, like there's different confession times. And I'm like, that was so amazing. We got to do that again. So then it was like probably just a few days later that we went again. And I don't want that to be like, it wasn't like ill intention, but like, I'm only coming to God because I want to feel good. That wasn't it at all. But I was feeling all these things that I've never felt before. Like I remember saying that to like Solomon and my parents, like, I'm just so full of joy that it was like, I just wanted to keep going to daily mass and going to confession because it was just, I think I was struggling after my daughter was born. Like, I don't want to say postpartum depression, but I think I was struggling for a while there, just getting into new routine. So it was just, I just wanted to keep feeling so close to God and going to his sacraments. So then we went, and it was Father Aaron Junkie. And this is when the first time that I heard of the word conversion. Because up to this point, I had no idea what happened. Like, I didn't know this happened to other people. I didn't know. Like, I really thought, like, maybe I'm crazy. I had no idea. And so I just told him in the confessional, like, that this crazy thing happened. I don't know what's going on. I just told him exactly whatever I told him. And he said, it sounds like you've had a conversion. And that's the first time that I heard that word. And so I was like, what's that? So then, of course, I start like, what's a conversion? And I find out that there's the Journey Home on EWTN, which if I go back just a few days before this, I said that to Saul because one of the things that I just didn't have the desire for anymore was TV. So like I didn't want to watch TV or anything anymore. But I said to Saul, like, I wish there was something where I could watch to learn about the church. And he said, well, haven't you heard about EWTN? And I was like, no, we've been together for so long. I'm not sure why he thought I would have known. And he never once mentioned it. So I was watching EWTN, and that's when I found that they had a show on there called The Journey Home, where people shared their conversion stories. And I'm like, this is crazy. So it started like making sense. I started to realize God has given me a gift that I share with some people. So it was just nice to see that I wasn't crazy, that something really profound did happen, and like how do I navigate life now after that? So then one day we're sitting in church at Immaculate Conception, really traditional church, and a lot of the women are wearing veils, and this was like the first time that I had like noticed that like women are wearing veils. And I very clearly heard God say, and it wasn't like I heard his voice, but it was very clear in my heart. And he said, "Jewel, I want you to veil." And I was like so confused by that I didn't even like say like, "God, you're speaking to me." I just immediately went into, "Oh, but I'm not going to change what I wear," because they all wear, like most of the women that veil wear like dresses or long skirts or something. And I'm like skater boy attire, jeans, sometimes sweatpants to mass. I was nervous what that meant. Like I'm going to have to change so much about my exterior to veil. And like I was coming up with all these excuses right then and there. And he just like quickly again said like, "I'm not asking you to change what you're wearing. I'm just asking you to veil." And I was like, whoa, that's kind of a big deal. But I'm very impatient, and I think God will use that at times to help me. So I'm like, I got to do this or I'm not going to do it. I got to do it now or I'm not going to do it. So I go to Divine Mercy Gifts, and the woman there, she also veils at Mass. So she asked me like, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "Oh, veils." I was like, and she's like, "Oh yeah." So that was really exciting to have like be met with someone who was excited to help me pick out a veil. And then we went to Mass, so it's a Saturday, and we go to Mass, and I have the veil in with like bobby pins. First time I'm ever putting bobby pins in my hair. I must have had some at home because I didn't go buy any. And I didn't have like this euphoric feeling like I did with confession or Mass. I was actually like the entire time was like fixing it because it kept falling out, and I was like, this is stressful. Like, are you sure that this is? Yeah, I need some help. We need a different solution here, if this is what we're gonna do every single time we come to Mass. So I went and I bought some headbands, and we hot glued the veil to a headband. And that's still what I do today, and that's actually what I recommend because they don't blow away. The kids can pull on them. Yeah. But anyway, so that night was the night that a lot of, like a whole new chapter of my life started. And at the time I was reading a book about Padre Pio. So I'm not sure if what all happened, but I just know for sure that it was the day that I started veiling is when I really realized that I was in a battle with the devil. So up to this point, I was having already some weird feelings. Like I would turn around and something was there. Like I felt like something was in the room, and it felt like it wasn't very good. And in fact, this would happen more often when I would talk with my dad about what I was learning about my faith, all my new experiences, and then when he'd leave and he'd go home, it would feel like something was in the house with me. One time it actually drove me, like I left because I was scared. And I went to my mother-in-law's and hung out with them. But so this night, my daughter's sleeping. We all sleep in the same bed. My husband, he gets into bed, and then I get into bed. Obviously, we're not asleep. We just hopped into bed. And immediately, something jumps onto me. And nothing is there physically, but I can't move. And it feels angry. I can feel the hatred on me, and I'm scared. It feels like it hates me, is the feeling. And I'm screaming. I'm not actually screaming, but I'm screaming at Solomon, I can see the back of him. I'm screaming at him, trying to get him to help me. And nothing's happening. And there was probably like 3 minutes of me sitting there. Maybe not that long, but it felt like for a few minutes that I was just, something was like attacking me. And finally I go, oh, I need to pray. I'm still like early on in my conversion that, I first trying to seek what I can see. And then I realize I need to go to God. And so I'm going to pray a Hail Mary, but all I get out is Hail Mary. And it's off of me immediately. And this gust of wind just deafening in my ears, like, but like you could not hear anything else. I didn't even pray the whole prayer. I just prayed Hail Mary. And then I like shot up because I was like trying to move. And Solomon turned over and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. And he's like, you were heavy breathing. Like, why didn't you help me? Just kidding. But I'm like, let's go. We need to go talk. So we left the room because my daughter was sleeping. And I'm just really shooken up because I can't even believe what just happened. And so we're sitting at the dining room table. And I tell him, and I don't think he even like realized, because this would go on to happen many times. And once it finally happened to him is when it like clicked for him. So, but I don't think he even like really realized what I had just experienced. But so I didn't do anything with it. The next day we go to mass. I have my veil that's hot glued to my headband and all is good. And then it was just probably a few days after that it happened again. And I'm not asleep, like I really want to stress that I wasn't like a sleep paralysis. It was like immediately upon laying down. And then it happened again. So this is all within the span of like a week, probably less than. But this time, it was slowly pulling me out of bed. And I wasn't actually being pulled out of bed. But when I'd close my eyes, it felt like I was being slowly pulled out of bed. And then when I'd open, I was still right where I was. And so I go to pray the Hail Mary because that's worked. But it's not working. It's still happening that I can't move, that I'm being pulled out of bed. So I just keep praying Hail Marys. And then finally, nothing is changing. So I finally pray and I say to God, I'll endure this for however long. Just don't leave me. And then it stopped and it went away. So then I finally emailed our priest and was like, okay, I need some help navigating whatever this is, because from how I grew up, I didn't want this to be like, am I asking for this? Like, why is evil physically attacking me? And so we met with Father Aaron Junkie, and he was wonderful, really. I cried the entire time of that one too. But he really reassured me that, it's just, Satan is just like a big bully. And when he has nothing left, he'll just use scare tactics, because that's essentially all that he has. And that was really reassuring to me. He described like how, I'm going to butcher it, but like in ancient times, they'd put their enemies in cages. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's the devil. So it's nothing to be scared of. And I felt bad for being scared because I only want to have the fear of God. But it was scary. I've never experienced anything like it before. And when I did talk about it with my mom, because that's someone else that I was like, help me. And she said, well, you're probably asking for it. I think she was just scared for me. So we had a little bit of a disagreement there. So then I was confused, like I don't want this. Obviously, I'm trying to be closer to God. So why is this happening? But little did I know that like my life since then would be many events of this constant struggle of, I'm realizing that every single day, that I am at war, that I am being tried to be drawn away from God, and that I'm here every single day, every single moment to have my eyes fixed on Jesus. And it's actually helped my faith grow to have those strange things happen, because it reminds me just how real it is.
Yeah.
Like this is the reality. What I once thought was reality is not. Like, the spiritual world is very real, and we're all in it. And it's constant too. It's actually, sometimes I feel a little bit exhausted with, I call it a gift from God because I feel like it is, because like I said, it brings me closer to him. But sometimes I'm a little bit exhausted and I'm tired and it's hard. It's not very easy at times. A lot of it is some physical suffering. That's not something that like people can see. And it's hard sometimes to remain in that. But those are also like some of the most beautiful moments that I've had with God, of where I realize I have absolutely no control, not even over myself, over my health. And I think those moments that I've been in, in the presence of evil so bluntly, have helped me remember, okay, God is here. Because if evil is so real, good has to be so real.
I think that's a gift in one way or another, because, people say things like, oh, ignorance is bliss. But the reality is the spiritual war that's happening around all of us isn't more real for you. It's just that you're aware of it for some reason. And a lot of people, they ignore it, or they don't recognize what's really going on.
Right.
And because of that, it's easy for people to become complacent in their faith. Because I don't know who said it, but it's been said many times. The greatest trick the devil ever played on anybody was to convince him that he didn't exist.
Right.
But when you know that he's real, then you can't deny that God is real.
Right. I think that's like the sum of what happened to me that night of my conversion was he was unmasked. The devil was unmasked. And now that I know he's real, my life changed. I think I was probably somewhere surfacing in the middle, going back and forth. And now it's like, okay, I just want to be on this side. And so that became like really distinct. Like you said, it's no more real for me. It's just that I'm aware of it now.
So what does that look like for you in your day-to-day life? Do you have a way that you enter into that each day, or even throughout the day, to keep yourself where you need to be?
Yeah. So the minimum is one chaplet, one rosary, praying with my husband, praying with my children. That's like the bare minimum. The days that I don't do that, just are hard in terms of my mind is just not in the right place. I feel like I'm easily taken advantage of by the enemy. Like, he just gets in my head, So that's my bare minimum. And I used to, I pray the chaplet with my kids for nap time.
Divine Mercy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And I used to have the TV on for nap time is how we'd go to bed. And this was before my conversion. And I remember, like I said, I've always loved God. There'd be moments where I'd cry out to him when I really needed him. And if you're a parent, like, I know that sounds silly, like, oh, you were in desperation during trying to get your kid down for a nap watching TV, but one day I really was, and I was like, this has got to change, like, this is just not easy, and I don't want to have to rely on the TV. Like, funny that happened even before my conversion, but so if any parents out there are watching it and just feel like stuck, like, I need to be better for my children, today we pray chaplet, and my kids it's one of the best blessings of my life, that we can take nap time, pray chaplet. I never thought that would come. Like, I always thought I'd have to turn the TV on to get them down. But what follows that then is, that's like my prayer time, is when my kids are asleep. It's just too hard otherwise, which, don't get me wrong, sometimes it's the sacrifice. So I'm not saying if you have an hour of quiet time, or if you don't have it, then, but I'm just really grateful that God allows me to have that. And it's not every day that we are able to do that too, but But then that's really when I enter into prayer and, real intimate moments with God. And then praying a rosary too is, I've come to love the rosary.
I mean, you kind of have you went from, I don't want to say zero, but you went from, we'll just call it zero for you
zero
to 1,000.
Yeah.
Like that. You said before, God was like a switch. I turn him off and turn him on. Well, it sounds like things got turned on for you in a pretty intense way, more than what a lot of people who are Catholics and practice their faith are, aware of or really cognizant of. What's that been like with your parents who, they're not even sure what to make of Catholicism, right? At some of the times, I mean, I know they go to church with you guys and they're around, stuff like that, but you're in a completely different place than you were.
Right.
How do they view what happened to you?
Yeah, it was radical. I mean, it was overnight. It was radical. It really was. And my parents were I'd love to ask them, any of my family, do you remember me before? Sometimes I wonder if only I can see that change a little bit. But of course, they were supportive of me growing closer to God and growing in my Catholic faith. But there were times when I would, like I said, we have some differences for what the church believes. So sometimes we disagree on those and we have some heated conversation. But me and my mom especially. But I like that because it challenges me to answer more of her questions, And she's the one who instilled in me that God is real. She's definitely who I got my faith basis from. But yeah, it's just kind of some bigger ticket items of what the Catholic faith believes that there is some disagreements with them. And when I was telling, of course I'm running to my parents with some of these experiences that I'm having that aren't super fun because I didn't know what to make of them. And like I said earlier, she kind of questioned maybe you're doing something wrong. And all I was doing was praying the rosary every day and watching EWT and going to mass. So, in my head, I'm I don't think I am. But also at the same time, that's my mom. I'm, I should always listen to my mom. One time she told me not to get a dog and I got a dog and then it lasted 6 days. I wish I would have listened to my mom then. But this was the one thing that I was disagreeing with my mom on, that I still am. It's the Catholic Church. That's it for me. And my mom is a great Christian. And I love her so much. And I pray every single day that my parents will see the Catholic Church for what it is. And I know it'll happen. I have so much hope in God.
That's beautiful. I see a lot of parents who feel the way you do about their kids. And I see people feel that way about their husbands and their wives and stuff like that. But it's so beautiful for me to see a daughter praying for that for their parents.
I can't even imagine what it would be like to be like this for your children. Because of the way that I feel about my parents. And they're just my parents.
Well, you love
it's so
them,
different with your children. Yeah. They're the best. Yeah. They really are. And I'm so grateful that they're my parents. Because, they've been so good to me my whole life. And we live together now. They live with us, and I love it. I wouldn't change a single thing about it.
That's so cool.
It really is, yeah.
Your story about how all of this stuff has been woven together through some things that on the surface would seem kind of either random or negative, like that kid saying to you, God's not real.
Yep.
To me, just listening to this, I feel like God has such a plan for you, Jewel, and for your family. because the devil is trying to attack, but yet Our Lady has been there for you. The Lord has been there for you. And it's like every time those attacks come, they get turned back and used for good. But you had to make a choice in the middle of that too. You had to decide, okay, I am going to think about what's my idea of hell.
Yeah.
And some people, when they hear that or when they encounter that question, their thought is, well, forget this. I'm not going to be controlled by anybody. I'm not going to be manipulated with fear. You were just like, no, this is real. I want to dig into this. And then you've had to make those choices. And Solomon too.
Yeah.
Because, the struggles he's had to decide, how do I deal with that? Do I cower back and run away? Because I've talked to him about it before too, and he's not afraid to talk to anybody about anything. And good on him for that, because a lot of men would be just like, oh, I don't want to go there.
Right.
But I think he realizes too that there's a ministry in sharing how evil has impacted your life and then seeing how it's turned around for good. But that doesn't mean that it just shuts off. It's a battle you fight every day.
Yep. I think it's really easy to think that like the actions that you do just with yourself, even like your thoughts, don't have that big of an impact. But they can, and they do, especially, when you have a spouse. So, we talk about that a lot. We're probably more open about that than most people, maybe make people uncomfortable at times. But like pornography is such a big thing in today's world that I just can't imagine how many women are out there feeling how I felt. And yeah, my husband and I would love to be a voice saying that there's a possibility that you'll overcome it. And it just takes a lot of forgiveness and time and being raw and being open. And that's, I think, really hard to do. But once you do that, like once you get over that initial hump, it just comes easy. And now, like, if we even have like one weird thought or one weird dream or something, Solomon and I share, just because there's going to be no cracks in our foundation. And yes, Satan is constantly trying to put a crack into marriages.
Yes.
So the more that you are upfront with your spouse, I mean, like that is love, is like loving somebody at their worst, instead of putting it onto myself of like, well, what's so wrong with me that you have to do that? I finally just realized, like, this isn't about me. This is something that this person that I love is struggling with, and I need to help him. And, I'm not going to say we're on the other side, because it could always happen again. But now we have like the tools to get through it. Forgiveness, prayer, the sacraments, Eucharist, all that. So yeah. Like now this is going to be public, people are going to see this, but I think that's important, because I think more people are struggling with this than we realize, or than that people want to say that they aren't. But it needs to be brought out into the open.
It does. And there are, I'm thinking about this because one of the, and this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but it's really not, but like Exodus 90 is partnering with our YouTube channel, our ministry.
Okay.
And that is a program for men, like for guys that are looking to get free from stuff, whether it be pornography or whether it be alcohol, whatever it might be, because the devil comes for us in different ways.
Yep.
And for men, a lot of times men are just like, okay, how do I fix this? What do I have to do? And Exodus 90 has been like this incredible program. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Exodus 90, for making this all possible. They've really come alongside our channel in a big way, because they view the aspect of conversion that we're talking about a lot of times on my YouTube channel with a different level of conversion to breaking free from all these idols and these sins. So, dudes, if you're hearing this and you're like, man, This is my story. How do I break free from this? Join us for Exodus 90. It starts January 20th. There's a link in the description. Go to the website. Just click on the link. I don't need to get into a big spiel about it, but just check it out. I promise you, if you go through this thing, it's going to feel like a fight, because it is. But as you're hearing from Jewel, it's a fight that you have to fight. It's one that you have to fight, because if you lay down and roll over, your family's going to get steamrolled by the devil. Your marriage is going to get steamrolled by the devil. So check out Exodus 90. And I don't know, maybe there are other things that Saul has found helpful. I should talk to him someday about this too here. But what do you think? Can you speak for him for a minute and talk about what did he do to move in that direction to overcome this?
Yeah. So what I know of Exodus 90 is like it's a lot of mortifications. Yeah. Correct? Okay. So actually, he didn't do Exodus 90, but mortifications were a big one for anything. I think mortifications are really good in general, just to get closer to God. That's like fasting from different things and taking on suffering for that purpose, just for people who don't know what that word means. Yeah. So, and prayer was like the biggest thing for him. So anytime that he even had like an inkling, because I would tell him like, call me, if you feel like you need, but he never did. I think it was just, he felt. That's weird. Yeah, right. Yeah, like I'm going to call my wife and tell her, because I didn't understand. I don't struggle with that. I didn't understand. I was just trying to help. Yeah. And I wasn't the answer though. So going to God is what, duh, right? But going to God is where he went and where he found help. So anytime he would even get the littlest bit, he would start to pray. Beautiful. And but also the biggest thing was getting rid of his phone. He now has a flip phone, and it's so funny how many people are like, man, I want one of those, and they don't ever say it's like for that reason, but there's so many distractions on social media. But that has been the biggest blessing, is getting a flip phone, because it's just not as accessible. And I didn't push that on him. I definitely was like, what about this option? And I was like, I'm not going to push that on you, but that's a decision that you need to pray about and then make. And then, finally one day we went to get a new phone, and he's got a flip phone, and it was a learning curve at first for texting. But now he's a pro at it. And I think he actually enjoys it. And sometimes I'm kind of jealous. I wish I didn't have the distractions of my phone either, but that's a whole other topic. Yeah. I remember a couple of years ago, it seemed like a lot of people were talking about that. They were making a comeback saying, okay, I'm going to that. Yeah. Because it's such a distraction to everyday life, and it almost becomes like the center of everything. Yep. Yeah. And when you see, like, when people lose their phone, they just lose their mind. I lost my phone in an airport recently. I left it in the rental car. Ooh. So I missed my flight. Oh, shoot. And I was like, you know. But I remember thinking to myself, and I was talking to somebody in the airport when I was sitting there for a couple hours while my flight had left, while I was waiting for the rental car place to open up. It was 5:30 in the morning. And I said, it just really stinks that we're so dependent on these devices that I can't go home today. When I want to, because I left this phone. It's not like I can just say, oh yeah, just ship it to me. Right. No, like everything's on there. Right. You know? But we can get into something about that later. But the reality is that's a big step, and good on Solomon for being willing to go, okay, this is that important to me, because sometimes the things that we have to do to break free from those sins that have such a grip on us, sometimes the things that we have to do to break free from those things are hard. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they require sacrifice. We can't just change one thing in our mind and go, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. But everything else that led us there or that contributes to that is unchanged. That's why when you see people who have gone through recovery or whatever, they have to get rid of all of their friends. Yeah. They have to get rid of all of the triggers, the near occasions of sin, as we talk about in Catholicism, because that's part of the fight. Yes. Yeah. And the overall outcome of our conversion has been beautiful. Like, really, we're changed people, and still always changing. Really has been beautiful, but the walk to get there has been very difficult. It's not easier by any means. Some things that I won't share, but God has called me to do many things that have been like, are you sure? Like, you want me to do what? Things that I wouldn't have even thought I could do. But, when God calls you to do something, he'll give you the grace to do it, and he walks alongside you, which is something I learned. Like, if he's calling me to it, he's going to get me through it. And all I have to do is like show up. Like, he really doesn't actually expect a whole lot of me, just my willingness to show up. And it's been prayer that's helped me show up, is just like some like just honest prayer of even like, God, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm that doesn't make sense to me. I'm scared of what the outcome of that will be. That doesn't seem like a good time for my family. But then I'm like I was saying earlier, I'm impatient though. So then it's like, okay, fine, let's just do it really quick and get it done so that it's done. And I always I don't regret doing what God has called me to do in those bigger, difficult times. I don't regret them. Like, there's some still that I'm like, don't make sense to me. And that I question actually a lot. Like, did I listen right? Mm-hmm. Was that really your voice? And they were like, really out of love. So I know that they were God's voice. But yeah, there's sometimes where they still don't necessarily like make sense to me. But they don't have to, because I'm a lot of coming to God is just like, your will, not mine, and what that looks like. And yeah, we're going to fail at that all the time, but it's just, are you going to pick it back up in the next moment? If you fail, are you going to try again in the next moment? Because he's always reaching out his hand. And that was something that I've learned about God, is that like, he's not disciplining me. That's not like the take that he's taken with me is like, hey, you were gone from me and now you're back and now I have to discipline you. He's like happy I'm back and that I'm here, and he's excited. Like, like the lost sheep, mm-hmm. Like he came after me.
Amen. He left the 99 to go after you. And that's a beautiful recognition, because what I don't hear you saying is, well, I figured out that I needed something different in my life. So I went through all this research and all this thing and all these different steps. You just said, okay, God, I'll show up.
Yeah.
I don't have to understand it.
Yeah.
That's what conversion is all about, Jewel. Too many people think conversion is about understanding.
Yeah.
And they think, I can't convert until I work my way through all of this. No, it doesn't work that way. You don't convert yourself.
Right.
God converts you. You just show up.
Yep.
And that's what's so cool about this, is because you just showed up and you continue to show up. And I have a feeling that we're going to see some incredible things happen in your life, in your marriage. And I know we talked about like the small group ministry with the marriage group that you guys are going to be leading and other things. And maybe even through this interview, there will be people that will want to reach out to you or whatever. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, the heart of that is what allows God to work so powerfully through you. Because what God is looking for is not people to do things for him. He's looking for people he can do things through.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of a religious platitude. I say it a lot, and I didn't invent it. I heard it, but it's true.
Yeah.
Because I think we can be so, especially people that are like you and me, who are impatient and want to get things done. It's always about, what do I have to do? What do I have to do?
Yeah.
What do I have to do? Sometimes God says, you just show up and I will tell you the things that I need you to do in those moments. Like, wear a veil. What? I don't understand it. Okay, you don't have to understand it. You just have to do it. The understanding will come later. So that's so cool to see that playing out in your life. I do have 3 what I call the most important questions. I ask these of all my guests, and I want to, because everybody has different answers from different perspectives, and I'm dying to hear what your perspectives are on these questions. Okay, so the first most important question is this: what do you think the most important thing is for someone who is considering Catholicism? They're not sure about it, but they're thinking about it. What's the most important thing they should do or know?
Yeah, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes instead of what I know now. Maybe I'll give 2 answers to that. If I'm coming from what I know, not putting myself in their shoes, but just some advice, I'd probably tell them to go to adoration, which is sitting in front of the Eucharist. I think just being there, that they would, I know that they will feel something different. But going there and praying, if you ask God for, where do you want me to be? What is the truth that you want me to know? Not all of it, but what's the truth that you want me to know in this moment? He'll guide you, of course. I've asked much smaller, stupider things of God to help me with. I know that he would help somebody with that question. But if putting myself in their shoes, if they're not into going to adoration quite yet, I think, always just prayer is probably a good one. I want to say that asking the Blessed Mother to pray for you too, but some people might be a little bit turned up by that one too. But just, God is so loving and forgiving that what does it really, why can't you just go out on a limb? Why couldn't you just go to adoration or ask the Blessed Mother to pray for you? Take that leap. If that's something that someone is really turned off by, just take that leap and see what happens of it. Just try, because I know that they'll see God, that God will answer them. Because I was never away from the Catholic Church, but there's times when I realize before my conversion that Mary was with me. Like my daughter, she was born on Christmas, which is so funny to think about. But I wasn't really into when I would pray, I would just pray words, where my husband prayed actual prayers, Hail Mary, Our Father. Well, when I was giving birth to our daughter, I was praying Hail Marys.
Were you really?
Yes. And that was really crazy when I think about that now, because that was so out of my character. But I realize now that she was with me, and how even funnier that it was Jesus's birthday. I really wish that I would have known then what I know now, because that would have been a really beautiful moment. But it all happened in God's time, right? But yeah, I think that would be my advice.
Okay.
So I know that might be kind of striking for some people to hear, and they might be turned off by that if because that's kind of that's two really big beliefs of our faith that are distinct. But what would it hurt? I've
seen people who are in that position do both of those things, and I've seen incredible results from that. People who are just exploring Catholicism, go to adoration, ask the Blessed Virgin Mary for help, and they might be like, "What?"
Yeah.
But I've seen major things happen when people do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the next question is, what's the most important thing you would tell somebody who just became a Catholic in their first year of being a Catholic? What should they know or do?
Just don't rush it, maybe.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, I wanted to be so all in that I felt like if, because I would have some really, really overwhelmingly crazy days. And then I would have, periods of time where life seemed kind of normal. And I think I kind of beat myself up a little bit, I must not be doing enough, I must not be praying enough, or I need to go to confession. I must be all these things. And it was when I started to look too into myself. And I was trying, I was not looking at the finish line of, this is about Jesus, not about me. And it wasn't about achieving something, achieving a different level of knowing the faith or whatever. It's just every day, wake up and, I don't want to say do the best you can do, but do the best you can do, Look at today is your very last day. How are you going to glorify God today? And sure, that might not be super pretty, might be a pretty suffering, bad day, but that actually suffering can be so beautiful if you can rest it at God's feet. And it's so hard to do. And there's a reason why it's so hard to do, is because he can do so much with it. I think there's some quote that's like, God is closer to you when you suffer than when you feel joy, or something like that, which he's always so close to us. But, some people will understand, like, that has clicked for me now. Is like, I've had some moments of suffering where, there's nothing I can do but lay it at God's feet. And then he just picks you up, like that's what it took was letting it go to get over it, to being picked back up. And it's hard to do, and it doesn't get any easier, I don't think either. But once you've seen it happen once, you know that it'll happen again.
That's amazing. I think of the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Mm-hmm. And the Lord draws near to the brokenhearted. He gives grace to the humble. There's so many things in the scriptures that back up what you just said. But I think the idea of not rushing it and just allowing yourself to be. Because like you said earlier, that prayer of, okay, I can just show up. Sometimes in the first year of Catholicism, or right when you become a Catholic, it's really about showing up. Yeah. And going, okay, I'm here for this. I came through this process. I got here. Yeah. Now what do I do? Yeah. Well, sometimes it's about just rest. Mm-hmm. I remember for my own conversion, it was, Father Chris, he said to me when I first became Catholic, he said, just be Catholic for a year. Don't try to do a bunch of stuff. Yeah. Because you need to rest. Yeah. And I'm at the time feeling like, but I'm so excited. I want to jump into everything, and I want to but I so needed that time to just be. Yeah. And let God do what God wanted to do. And then the time comes to do all the other things when he's ready. Yeah. So I love that answer.
Teaching us patience.
Teaching us patience. You and me both, girl. Yep. Yeah. That's a hard lesson to learn, because I'm one of those people that when I know what the right answer is, I don't realize that there's a road between knowing the right answer and then the intended result. Right. Sometimes I think, well, because I know what it is, therefore that should happen. But, you have to work that. Yeah. And let God work that. Yeah, that makes me think of, one time I was having a disagreement about the faith with my parents, and I don't want to say that, just like one of the Catholic beliefs, And then when it was done and over with, I said to God, I was like, I'll always fight for you. I was really proud of that. I'll always fight for you. And he really quickly said, I'm not asking you to fight. I'm asking you to love. And I was like, whoa. Oh, yeah, that hit me really hard. And my attitude has changed since that day, because he's not asking me to fight. He's just asking me to love. And sometimes, it's a harder fight sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, exactly. Perfectly said. That's the harder fight. Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. Okay, I got one more. Okay, so the same kind of along the same kind of lines here. So what would you tell someone who has been a Catholic for 20, 30 years, and it's just kind of been their whole life, and they're on the other side of all this, and it's just been the air they breathe? Yeah, maybe that sounds silly to say, because I've only really been like a diehard Catholic for 2 years now, but keep going. Don't give up. I feel like I've already experienced a little bit of dry spells, where you want to see results, where you're like, where are you at, God? Come, like in moments of like, please help me, or like, I've been beside you always, and can you show me more? And that's actually really beautiful that those people have been so devout their whole life. Like, blessed are those who haven't seen, or whatever that beatitude is. Like, those that haven't necessarily needed to see some of these things that I've experienced, some of these, Yeah, Jesus, he was telling the disciples, he said, you believe because you've seen. Right. Blessed are those who haven't seen and yet they believe. Yeah. I think that's hats off to those people, because I'm really grateful for the experiences I've had, because they've solidified my faith. I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have those, And for those people who have just been raised in it, and that's been their life, and that's just what they do,
I can't imagine what God has in heaven for those people who just so willingly, without needing a whole lot, have loved him and served him.
Beautiful. Well, Jewel, thank you so much for sharing all this stuff with us. I know that there are people watching that their minds are being blown right now, and I can guarantee you have helped a lot of marriages just by talking like this and sharing the things that you've shared. A lot of deep things coming out of someone who's only been a hardcore Catholic for a couple of years. And I know that God has a lot to do in and through you. And so I want to thank you for being willing to be pretty raw here today and share this.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me so that I'm able to.
Absolutely. One more. Any closing thoughts you want to share with people before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I feel like I shared a lot of, like you said, really raw things. But and before coming here, I was like, are we sure that I want to do that? I work in sales, so are we sure that I want to do that? But sure, I work in sales, but ultimately I work for God.
Amen. Well, you've done great work today, Jewel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening to Catholic Feedback with Keith Nestor. Send in your questions or comments to feedback@catholicfeedback.com. Catholic Feedback is brought to you by Stewardship, a Mission of Faith, and our generous supporters on Patreon, locals, and donations through our website. Catholic Feedback is a production of Down to Earth Ministries. For more information or to bring me to your parish or event, please visit our website at downtoearthministry.org. That's down, the number 2, earthministry.org. See you next time.